Tugboats try to pull stranded cruise ship to shore as rescuers rush to evacuate passengers. CNN. Tugboats are trying to move a cruise ship to shore after it was stranded in rough seas off Norway with 1,300 people aboard following engine failure, rescue officials said Sunday. Load error: 3 of the Viking Sky ship's 4 engines are working. News released by CNN on MSN. Mueller's end shifts focus to New York prosecutors. While all eyes this weekend are on the Department of Justice and Mueller's conclusions, the end of the special counsel's report won't finish all of the investigations into Trump. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York is. News released by The Hill on MSN. New Zealand mosque attack. Thousands attend vigil to honor victims. Christchurch, New Zealand. Thousands of people gathered in the New Zealand city of Christchurch on Sunday to listen to prayers, songs, and speeches at a vigil to remember the 50 people killed in a terrorist attack on 2 mosques. One of those watching. News released by NBC News. Washington and the public await AG Barr's summary of Mueller report's contents. U.S. Attorney General William Barr spent Saturday poring over Special Counsel Robert Mueller's confidential report of his 2-year Russia probe, as Barr and his advisors decide how much of Mueller's findings will be made available to Congress and the news released by Fox News on MSN. May's cabinet in open revolt, plotting overthrow, Times says. Trump golfs with Kid Rock in Florida, a day after pro-Gulmar faces hundreds of protesters in California. Bloomberg. Theresa May's cabinet is in open revolt against the Prime Minister and wants an interim leader to complete the Brexit process. According to news released by Bloomberg on MSN. Ethiopian Airlines defends its Boeing planes after deadly crash. Addis Ababa, Reuters. The chief executive of Ethiopian Airlines has rejected media reports that optional equipment for Boeing 737 MAX planes was critical for safety aboard a flight that crashed this month. The crash of Flight 302 and a similar one. News released by Reuters. Mueller report. U.S. Congress awaits key findings from Attorney General Barr. U.S. congressional leaders are awaiting conclusions from Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report into alleged collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, with early findings expected Sunday. The long-awaited report was submitted on Friday to Attorney. News released by BBC. Which NCAA tournament games will be best on Sunday? We ranked them so you know when to watch March Madness. Saturday's second-round games delivered some memorable moments, but was low in the bracket-busting department. Sunday figures to be different, with 5 double-digit seeded teams in action, including Cinderella's Liberty and UC Irvine as they look to. News released by USA Today. Trump says barbed wire can be a beautiful sight. Many border communities disagree. Most people know it as razor wire. It coils atop the walls and fences that divide the U.S. and Mexico, snaking through weeds and past traffic signs, splintering the sunlight with its shiny knife-like barbs. The U.S. military prefers a less menacing name. News released by Los Angeles Times. Aquarium of the Pacific CEO drives bold vision in climate change-focused expansion. Schubel, 83, says his interest in conservation can be traced to the concerns he developed observing the Great Lakes while growing up in a small Michigan town on Lake Huron. He saw firsthand how the freshwater lakes affected his community, including his. News released by Los Angeles Times. Celebrating 100 years of Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Early in 1963, in the midst of wrangling with a local printer who refused to set type for a text vivid with expletives, Lawrence Ferlinghetti drafted a letter to his friend and fellow poet, Allen Ginsberg, if it weren't for having that there. News released by Los Angeles Times. Depressed and anxious? These video games want to help. In the coming adventure video game Sea of Solitude, the main character, a young woman named Kay, navigates a partly submerged city as she faces a multitude of red-eyed scaly creatures. None are as terrifying as her own personal demons. As the game. News released by New York Times. Protesters take to streets of Pittsburgh after policeman acquitted of killing black teen. Protesters took to the streets in Pennsylvania on Saturday after a white police officer who fatally shot an unarmed black teenager was acquitted. Michael Rosfeld, 30, shot 17-year-old Antoine Rose 3 times in the back as he tried to flee police last June. News released by BBC. March in London demanding a second Brexit vote draws huge crowds. Protesters filled London streets and packed Parliament Square on Saturday to demand a second referendum vote on Brexit. The original deadline for Britain to leave the European Union was March 29, but Prime Minister Theresa May secured a little more time. News released by NPR. In a vast, dust-swept landscape, Islamic State Caliphate ends in rubble and wreckage. Its militants believed they would conquer Rome, Paris, and Washington. It sought to smash the century-old borders that defined the Middle East, and create a project whose central slogan was enduring and expanding. Instead, the culmination of that. News released by Los Angeles Times. Cystic fibrosis, existing drug may improve lung function. Healthline Media Incorporated would like to process and share personal data, example mobile ad ID, and data about your use of our site, example content interests, with our third-party partners. See a current list, using cookies and similar automatic collection tools. News released by Medical News Today. NASA posts image of a powerful fireball exploding over Earth. A radiant fireball exploded over the remote Bering Sea in December 2018, though it wasn't until some 3 months later that scientists, scouring satellite images, discovered the dramatic event. NASA's Terra satellite, an Earth-observing satellite the size. News released by Yahoo News. The reinvention of Kristin Cavallari, how she transformed from reality bad girl to boss mogul. When MTV viewers head for the hills later this year, one familiar face won't be amongst the cast. These days, the closest the teenage reality star turned actress turned shoe designer, cookbook author, store owner, and lifestyle mogul gets to the 22-year-old. News released by E! Discovered after 70, Black artists find success, too, has its price. MacArthur Binion had been creating art almost completely under the radar for 4 decades, handling his own occasional sales and raising 2 children in Chicago on a teaching salary. Now Mr. Binion, the first African American to receive a graduate degree. News released by New York Times. China refuses to concede on U.S. demands to ease curbs on tech firms, FT. Reuters, ahead of fresh high-level trade talks this week, China is not conceding to U.S. demands to ease curbs on technology companies, the Financial Times reported on Sunday, citing 3 people briefed on the discussions. U.S. Trade Representative. News released by Reuters.